Cultivating wise mind. Simply put, wise mind is the balance between a reasonable mind and the emotional mind. Hi guys! Thanks for bearing with me last week with the no voice situation. As you can hear, my voice is back and I'm on tip-top condition, so yay! So with my new voice, I'm bringing with you today Cultivating Wise Mind. So we're going to start by talking with the ways that people cope. People learn to cope with their problems in many different ways. For example, they'll hide away alone, drink alcohol, speak to friends and family about it. Over time, people tend to settle into just a few ways of coping. Although they seem to work in the moment, in some ways, they can also add to our problems. Even if these ways are not entirely helpful, we carry on using them because they are doing what we need at the time to help. These same old ways of coping are called repeated patterns of behaviour. Rationally, we can see the behaviours as a problem, but still find they are not easy to change. So what makes it hard to change? One of the biggest factors is our emotions. Emotions are incredibly powerful and they can try to push us into patterns of behaviour and patterns of thinking. This means that the emotions can sometimes be a really fast reaction, demanding action before we have a chance to think. Our brains are sensitive to emotions, particularly those that involve threat or fear. That's for the good reason of survival. You see a lion or a tiger that's approaching you hungry, you need to leave quick. There's no time for thinking. So our emotions are making it hard to change, but what makes these behaviours even stronger? Acting like our thoughts and feelings, what they're telling us to do and be like, strengthens those patterns, making that pattern stronger. For example, if we practice being angry, we get good at being angry. If we tell ourselves stories of how hopeless we are, we get better at believing this. It could also prevent us from inviting alternative ways of being in our lives. They create habitual ways of coping. Even those that are self-defeating are trying to protect and soothe us. They are not wrong, but they can be unhelpful for us. They're there just to provide a quick fix. This can make the situation 100 times worse in the long run. So while we use them, it can prevent us from learning other ways of being with difficult emotions. There can be a risk that we close the lid on other ways of thinking, being, or doing. We can get stuck in this repeated cycle of behaviour, the repeated patterns of behaviour that have been learnt in order to cope with feelings that make us feel uncomfortable, anxious, stressed, desperate, scared, angry, you name it. These patterns can even become like a story or identity of who we are. This brings us to thinking about wise mind. So what exactly is wise mind? This is a skill that involves us starting to engage in other parts of our mind rather than emotions and learned responses. It relies more on using our wise mind to judge rather than just acting immediately on feeling. Think of it of thinking brain, emotional brain, action brain. So instead of having a trigger that we use our habitual fast track, our learnt pattern of behaviour and go to our usual coping mechanism, we have our trigger, we use our wise mind and create a decision of whether we're going to use the coping mechanism or whether we need an alternative coping mechanism. So let's break that down. We have two parts of our brain that work in tandem to create a wise mind. We have the emotional mind, also known as monkey brain, and we have our rational mind, which is our human brain, our civil brain. And when you put those together, they create a wise mind. And the emotional mind is responsible for really strong emotions, obviously, such as love, hatred, fear, guilt, joy, the things that we experience without having to think about it. The rational mind is where we problem solve, do math, science, engineering. It quite easily is the brain, and the emotional mind, the heart. So the example is that we get really angry. There could be reasons for this. It could be something that feels like it comes out of the blue. But the issue is that we get angry. The repeated pattern of behaviour is that we take these painful feelings out on other people. So what's the pros? What's the positive of using this particular pattern? It can make me feel a little better in the short term. It lets other people know how I'm feeling. But what are the cons, the negatives of using this pattern of behaviour? I end up losing good friends. I fail to use skills that have fewer consequences, such as soothing or distraction. I can get into trouble with the police. I feel more of a failure. I feel guilty for upsetting others afterwards. Looking at this pros and cons list, we can see that it is directly contradicting our goal to keep friends, our goal to not be in trouble, that it goes against the value for kindness that we want to have. This means that we need to stop and make a decision. Remember the trigger, go to wise mind to create a choice of doing that behaviour again next time or creating a new pattern of behaviour. So what's the pros for using emotional first aid or any other skills that help you cope in a helpful, healthy way? Well, you'll feel like you achieved something. You don't end up feeling guilty. You get on better with other people. You stay out of trouble. And you get support. It has worked before. This works with your value of kindness and your goals to keep friends and to keep yourself out of trouble. However, the cons could be you don't always feel better right away. There is a time of distress and discomfort. You don't get a chance to express feelings as openly. We'll be discussing ways of expressing feelings openly and healthily later on in the part of the EFA course. On the point where you don't always feel better right away, you have to remember that the behaviours before didn't make you feel better straight away normally. It's something that you've built and learnt and taught yourself how to be. That's why your anger gets bigger and sadness gets bigger, because you're impounding, impacting this behaviour into this big thing. So the more you practice, the easier it will come. And sometimes being uncomfortable needs to be a sense that you're feeling so that you can heal completely from it. So what can we practice then? Over the next week, think about one or more habitual ways that you use to cope with distressing feelings. These ways need to be something that you want to change or are thinking of changing. Conduct a pros and cons for each of these, as I did here. Then before acting, pause and count to 10 and ask yourself, what would wise mind want to be telling you right now? Then create the second pros and cons list and see if there's an improvement to be made. Well, that's it for cultivating wise minds. Hopefully you'll be able to do your practicing, whether you do one emotion a day, whether you just do it once a week, whether you do it when something comes up, however works best for you. Remember your health. I will see you next week for Soothing the Mind, and have a lovely day. Keep safe, keep smiling. Bye.